Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the AI for Good All Year Always Online webinar. My name is Ida Jabiri from the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, and I have the privilege of introducing today's webinar. ITU is the United Nations Specialized Agency for ICTs, and we are also the organizers of the AI for Good Global Summit alongside the X Prize Foundation in partnership with 36 UN sister agencies, ACM, and co-convened with Switzerland. The goal of the summit is to identify practical applications of AI to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and scale the solutions for global impact. Now, like most of the world, the AI Summit has gone digital, and we are moving forward with weekly online programming, allowing us to reach even more people throughout 2020. Today's webinar could be considered part 2 of the AI for Good Gender Breakthrough track that would have been taking place in Geneva were it not for the virus. We have a distinguished set of panelists today, but we're also counting on you, the participants, to help create an engaging discussion. For this, we will be using the Q&A functionality where you can find just left of the center of the bottom of your screen. In addition to the Q&A, there's also the chat functionality. Please make sure to set the message recipient as everyone or all panelists and all participants, and not just to the panelists. You can select this option just above the message box. Now, before we turn to our panel, I would like to ask everyone to use the chat functionality and let us know where you're connecting from, which city or which country. So I will begin. I will write in the chat to everyone, Geneva, Switzerland. Okay, so make sure to send it to all panelists and attendees, not just the panelists, because not everyone can see you. Okay, I see. We have Toronto, we have UK, Colombia, oh, it's moving fast, Spain, Italy, Mumbai, lots of places. Great. So I see we have a very international crowd today, and I am looking forward to introducing our facilitator now, Haneen Khalaf, who is the Principal Project Manager at X Prize. Over to you, Haneen.
Thank you so much, Ida. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, where we will discuss how to leverage AI technologies to achieve gender equity. So my name is Haneen Khalaf. I'm the Principal Project Manager. I'm also leading our gender initiative, which is an effort to close one of the most invisible problems in the world, which are gender data gaps. Today, I'm joined by our amazing gender brain trust, who you'll meet very shortly. But before we start, I just want to level set. So the purpose of this webinar is to introduce the topic areas in which we're seeking project submissions from the public. So as part of the AI for Good Gender Breakthrough track, a team of thought leaders known as our Brain Trust are using their expertise in data and AI systems to help drive global initiatives in the area of gender equity. So by the end of this webinar, you will find out how you can participate. And again, the goal of the Gender Breakthrough track is to generate meaningful projects that have a short or medium-term impact on advancing SDGs by using AI, data, ecosystem and community building and collaboration. So before we dive into the topics, I'd love for our Brain Trust members to introduce themselves. So please feel free to start your video and start your audio, Brain Trust members. And we'll start by having Francesca Rossi introduce herself, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Haneen. Hi, everybody. So I'm Francesca Rossi. I work at IBM Research in the US. I have a background mostly in academia, actually, because I joined IBM only 5 years ago. And I've always worked in my career, I've always worked in AI, trying to advance AI capabilities. But in the recent years, I've also been trying to advance our capability to make AI as beneficial as possible, either with technological solutions, research-based, technology-based, or also with with non-technological solutions, like working together with many other stakeholders, policymakers, even UN agencies, and many others that are important actors in the space of AI. So at IBM, I am the AI ethics leader for IBM. So I co-chair, for example, the internal AI ethics board, that is our governance piece to put in place concrete actions to make sure that the technology that we deliver has the right properties regarding bias or many other desirable properties that we may want. Thank you.
Amazing. Caitlin, please.
Hi, so I'm Caitlin Kraft-Buckman. I run Women at the Table, which is a civil society organization based in Geneva, and is focused on systems change in the economy, in sustainability, technology, and democratic governance. And we've had a very, very hardcore focus for the last 2 years on AI and gender, so that we're very, very happy to come in as gender experts and colleagues in the technology sector.
Welcome, Caitlin. And Nicole, please.
Hi, I'm Nicole Washington, and I have a background in engineering and management consultant. I've been an angel investor with one of the largest angel groups in the US, and I've done that for over 10 years. In my spare time, I have been a staunch advocate of STEM initiatives, and I've worked to increase awareness and excellence in STEM in communities that are often underrepresented. And so that is, of course, communities that include African Americans, Latinos, and women. So I'm glad to be here today. Thank you, Haneen, for having me.
Glad to have you, Nicole. Thank you. And Eileen, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aydin Kaliskan, and I'm an assistant professor at the Computer Science Department of George Washington University. And my expertise is on machine learning and AI systems, especially how can we make AI for social good. I have been investigating AI ethics with respect to especially bias, fairness, and privacy in the last couple of years. And I'm trying to understand how bias propagates in AI systems. For example, how do we communicate bias through language and that ends up passing to AI systems? Or how can we analyze the fairness properties of AI systems? Do they exhibit any discriminatory outcomes and so on? As a result, I'm very excited and happy to be part of this event and organization, and I'm looking forward to having this discussion today. Thanks,
Amazing.
Eileen.
Thank you, Eileen. So welcome to our amazing Brain Trust. We are missing 2 members, Stephen and Azer, so I just want to do a shout out to them. They're with us in spirit today. So before we dive into the actual topics, Francesca, can you tell us more about the Gender Breakthrough Track and what are some of its goals?
Yes.
Thank you.
So this track is about, gender equity and gender issues in general related to technology and AI. So the point is that, our world has been shaped over the centuries by mostly the point of view of men. So they embedded in all the policies and decisions that govern our world, their point of view, their habits, their priorities, and even their physiology, which is different from women, of course. And this generated, a lot of decisions made according to this point of view. For example, we see examples in many different domains, from car crash tests that are designed to protect mostly men, or clinical trials, or even protective equipment in the pandemic age, where the protective equipment are thought with the physiology usually of men rather than women. But even to go to the technological domain, like voice recognition systems that work better for men or for women, or even face recognition systems that, again, or face detection, whatever, that work better for men than for for women. So this generated a lot of decisions and a lot of data that reflects these choices and these biases. And as you know, in the current age, data is really what will feed technology to help people make better decisions. So if we rely on this kind of data without checking that really reflects what we want of our society, then we may use biased data that can generate in decisions that may be biased, unfair, and generate discriminations about not just gender, of course. So there are many kinds of bias, but here we wanted to focus especially on the gender one. So this track goal is to really reflect on what can be the possible solutions to this problem, whether they are technological or even non-technological solutions, possibly in a multidisciplinary way. So we welcome projects that are very multidisciplinary. And the idea here is to go towards getting closer to the Sustainable Development Goals number 5, which is to define a more equitable world. So that's the overall goal, and again, we welcome the participation of everybody to really achieve the goals of this track along the 3 dimensions that we have identified, that I think we will go in more details a little bit later.
Exactly. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. And like you said, we will dive into those specific topics in a little bit. But before we do get started, Francesca, can you just tell us, what is the next step for people who do want to be involved? I know you mentioned a few different topics. We'll get into more details in a second, but who are we hoping will get involved? What kinds of projects are we hoping to see?
Yes, so we will talk more about the 3 topics that we have identified to give a structure to the set of projects that can be proposed, but we would, in general, so each project proposal will have to choose one particular of these 3 topics, but we are going to prioritize and prefer short-term projects that so where we can see an impact in a short time, like kind of 3 or 6 months. Given that this is a gender related track, and that we think that again, technology solutions should be complemented also by the diversity in project teams, we also would prioritize teams that are very diverse in that are submitting projects that are very diverse in their composition, diverse in terms of gender, but also diverse in terms of the different skills and background they can bring to the specification and the work of the project. So in general, multi-stakeholder teams that involve academia, research people, technology people, domain experts, and so a mix of the different voices that need to be together to really understand what's the best way to identify the problem and also to find the best solutions. So we have deadlines that people that I think that later on that we will be more precise about them, but already, I mean, the call is open for receiving these projects, and then as you know, at the end of September there will be the top 3 will be presented in the event. Virtual
Perfect.
event, of course. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So Nicole, before we dive into the actual topics, can you describe a little bit about the journey of this breakthrough track up until this point, and what kind of work have you and your fellow Brain Trust members been doing?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. As everyone knows, first of all, I just have to commend my colleagues because we've done all of this through, a pandemic, through social unrest, through our incredibly busy schedules. So, it has been all because we believe so passionately in this idea of removing as much gender bias as possible from not just AI data, but as you'll hear about and as you've heard, the models for AI as well. And we just believe it's so important that we have assembled to do this incredible work. You know, we all come from different backgrounds, which has been really lovely, and we have different subject matter expertise. But as we've gone through the process of designing this track and the outcomes of the track, we first, you know, wanted to think about what are our goals? What would be the goals that we need in order to accomplish those objectives that Francesca just talked about. And then when we did that, as we went to design the track, we thought about there's some more expertise that we need, not just for the people who are going to create the groups and present or their projects, or that would compose the project groups, but also for mentors. So we want mentors to gather around those folks as well. And so we knew that we needed more expertise in different areas than what we all had as a group. And luckily enough, we have the tremendous networks so that we could easily go out and get those people. So that was, you know, really comforting to know. I think this team was well assembled. You know, how did we do it? We used technology, right? We used email, we used Zoom, we used various platforms to communicate and put our ideas down in real time so that we could discuss those things. So in my opinion, I think it has been a really wonderful labor of love. And I'll say that because people have still gone about their regular lives. You know, they've had jobs, careers. Some people have moved thousands of miles away from their home during all of this time. So I think, has been probably the next best thing to gathering together in Switzerland, which, you know, we're hoping to be able to do one day.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And we seriously cannot thank you enough for all of your time and energy and passion towards making this whole project a reality. So thank you.
Pleasure.
So in the next section, we're about to unveil our 3 topics that we are seeking projects within. Once we get through the 3 topics, there will be a slide that summarizes it. So don't worry, you don't have to listen to every single word, but please do. So is everyone ready to hear the first topic? Okay, let's go. So Francesca, the first topic area focuses on identifying technical and non-technical ways to define, detect, and evaluate algorithmic gender bias. How did you come up with this topic, and why is it so important?
Well, yes. So that's the first topic that came to our mind, to define innovative ways for detecting and mitigating gender bias. And as Nicole said, not just in data, but also in the models, but also in the uses of these AI systems, but also in the policies around AI systems. So the whole ecosystem around AI, whether it's data collection and checking and evaluation, whether all the design choices that are made during the development phases, whether the deployment, the uses, and the policies around AI should be taken into considerations. And we hope to see, really a combination of actors that play roles in these various phases around AI to propose innovative ways and to understand and identify and solve gender bias, also around the fact that many different factors come into play. So intersectionality for us is a very important concept, to put together various factors that can play a role in gender bias. The role of culture that may differentiate among ways that different regions of the world at different cultures and background can look at gender bias. The role of language, the presence of women and different genders in research environment, in the social media, online presence, for example, in Wikipedia, as well as in the economic environments. So the not just really, in every aspect of our everyday life, whether in the real life, whether in the virtual and online life. And we also welcome projects that can try to evaluate gender bias and then mitigate it using both a mix of qualitative and quantitative ways to measure and define gender bias. We know that in some scenarios there are quantitative ways to define gender bias with numbers, but in some other scenarios maybe it's better to use a qualitative way to define the issues. So we welcome, any one of these and possibly a mix of them. So everything that can help understand really how to identify and mitigate the gender bias with various factors and various aspects to consider at play around this topic.
Great, very clear. Eileen, do you have any more specific specificities that you'd like to add to this in terms of what you're looking for under the project?
Francesca did a great job giving an overview about our first topic, which is a very important topic at this age of AI. And it's basically incorporated in every aspect of our lives. It's in every social fabric that we are dealing with. And the AI ecosystem is quite complex. Accordingly, understanding how we can promote gender equity through AI requires understanding the different components of this AI ecosystem. And when we are talking about AI in the social domain, we cannot decouple it from humans. And accordingly, we need to start understanding what kind of biases we might be dealing with respect to especially social groups, intersectional groups, or however you would like to define gender. And as a result, once we are using AI tools, we might also be able to define and detect new types of biases or discover biases that we were not even aware of. And once we are able to define and detect them, then we can start evaluating it. And when we build the tools to evaluate AI bias, especially with respect to gender, and when we are talking about gender, we are talking about basically the largest social groups in the world. How can we use these tools to promote gender equity? Because once we are able to measure it, that means that in the future, we will also be able to somehow manipulate AI systems so that they can lead to the outcomes that we desire, especially to promote gender equity. And accordingly, again, as Francesca mentioned, there are many domains that we can start exploring these AI systems in. Research is one of them, an obvious one, but at the same time, how are women represented in social media? How are they represented on Wikipedia? Or how much woman involvement can be observed in research, in corporations, in government? And how do these affect the AI systems that are being developed by diverse sets of machine learning developers, for example? Accordingly, how can we make use of all of these different components and knowledge domains so that we can build tools to promote gender equity through AI and also mitigate gender biases or discriminatory effects of AI? So this is what I have for now, and I would be happy to go into details in the Q&A section more.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So just to summarize, the first topic is identify technical or non-technical ways to define, detect, and evaluate algorithmic gender bias. Now we're ready for the unveiling of the second topic. So Caitlin, the second topic asks, how can AI systems be designed and used to help human decision-making be more gender inclusive? So again, why did you choose this topic and why is it so necessary to address?
Thank you. Well, as you see, we all look at this as a continuum. So all three of the questions really work together. So this first question is a top level. It's about detecting, mitigating bias. Now this next one is has data, a part of it, which comes later, but really talks to the model and talks to the design of the system. And how do we design fair systems in AI? This goes to many different areas of fairness. It goes to the binary, literally and figuratively, of male, female, but it also goes to very interesting and dynamically important question of intersectionality. So it's just not really just one section or another. It is how all these things intersect in different ways and wind up being systemic bias, which we're taking from the analog world and transplanting all too frequently into the digital world. So if, as an example, in terms of models, if we just look at medical systems, which Francesca mentioned, we know that the norm study population was always Caucasian men in the US. And that led to thinking from everybody that the innovative data research that we had was basically whatever worked for men, whatever worked for white men, worked for women, Black women, white women. But what happens is that we've seen now through research that's gone on since those things, or cardiologists see that even implicit gender bias associated in simulations clinically, that cardiology testing, male, female patients, they diagnose totally differently for male and female. We also know that from another set of studies, implicit biases in healthcare professionals for women of color, particularly African-American women, and they're a contributing factor for disparities in adverse maternal and child health outcomes, rates of disparities in contraception use, access to and quality of prenatal care, clinical decision-making in intrapartum, postpartum, basically the entire human experience of being an African-American woman and being a woman altogether. So this is models writ large, and we're looking to see how can we design systems that include all of the fabulous diversity of experience that we all have to be fair and to really deliver value. So that's that question.
There it is. Thank you. And Eileen, can you get more specific about exactly what you're looking for under this project?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, AI is making consequential decisions about every human being nowadays, and it's just becoming more large scale. It's so cheap. A system is developed and it can be implemented at the world scale immediately, and then start making decisions about, okay, I have these resumes, which candidate should I invite for a job interview? Okay, I invited this one particular candidate to the job interview. Now I can automate the video screening process as well. So let's video record this candidate for half an hour and try to understand, am I going to hire this person? Is this person going to proceed to the next round? And what kind of things does this include? How does this person speak? What does this person look like? What are their facial expressions? What kind of language is this person using? So we see multiple modalities in AI being used to make very important decisions about humans. And as both Francesca, Nicole, and Caitlin mentioned, most of these systems are designed for men, and in particular, white men. And as a result, for example, when a resume screening system gets to parse the resume of a woman who wants to become a doctor, for example, she will implicitly be associated with not being a good fit as a doctor, because historically statistics show that white men are successful doctors. And once we are aware of these types of biases and we are able to detect them, then we can start making use of AI for gender inclusion purposes. And accordingly, when this resume screening system is able to detect such a bias, it can notify a human in the loop, for example, from the human resources, to suggest that, look, there might be a biased decision going on here, and you might want to take a closer look to make sure that you're actually making fair decisions accordingly. And in this way, we can use AI to enhance human decision-making, as opposed to causing more discriminatory decision-making that ends up not only perpetuating bias in society, but at the same time, it ends up amplifying society. But as I said in the beginning, since these tools are so cheap and large scale, if we learn how to use them to promote gender equity and intersectionality, then we will be able to get much more accurate results to basically promote the well-being and success of women, so that we can achieve some notion of fairness. And let me see if I had anything else to say on this topic. And the example I gave is based on human resources, but as I mentioned, this can apply to any area of our lives because AI is automating our entire lives nowadays, like our phones, our computers, job screening, health insurance, loan decisions, criminality prediction, and so on. And basically, the better we understand how to use AI systems and data sets to promote gender equity, the faster we can get there, as opposed to dealing with every individual human beings or institutions' implicit or explicit biases.
Incredible. If you're not ready to submit your projects yet, I don't know what's going to get you ready. So just to summarize, the second topic is how can AI systems be designed and used to help human decision-making be more gender inclusive? All right, we are ready to unveil the third topic. It's a little long, so just bear with me and then we will show you on the screen. So Caitlin, our third topic, it asks us, how can diverse data sets be identified and collectively leveraged to give a more complete picture on gender inequality to allow for evidence-based policymaking? So can you explain to us why you chose this topic and some practical examples of how this plays out in daily life and why it's so important?
Yes. Well, of course, we've all been understanding that data is the holy grail, although data is what informs the model and the model is informed by the system. So again, we're looking at an entire ecosystem, which I want to just reiterate. And I'm not the techno solutionist on this incredible group. So I must say an opposite view of what's happening in recruitment is it isn't so much as, oh, there's bias. It's a question of how do we actually unpack the bias, sadly. So very famously, we know the Amazon algorithm never deployed, that benchmarked against its engineering department, but its engineering department was Stanford graduates. Sorry for all the white male engineers in the audience. But what happened is that women who are chess captains or went to women's universities, colleges, were all downranked on the program because the benchmarks, the original data set, was skewed. We also see the Facebook ad delivery system delivering ads to lumberjacks, but not delivering ads about police department jobs, good, fabulous formerly fabulous middle-class jobs, but really only going to white males. So people, Black women, white women, who would have wanted to potentially have joined the police force never knew that there were openings or that they were welcome. So so a delivery system took a certain sort of database and then recreated the problem online. We know the Apple Card, we've just all lived through that, beautiful. Nothing about gender whatsoever in that Apple Card, but we see the two equally racked people, in this case, a husband and wife, one got 10 times the credit rating of the other because the system proxied for gender. And that's because the data in the system was such that it wound up sort of spitting out, even though gender was not a factor, it still understood that there was something gendered in the data set. And that's exactly what we're looking to see. How do you design something that doesn't have those foibles? I just want to say something else here, that going back to we're doing something on medicine now, so I'm very into medicine, but there was an algorithm that detects skin cancer more accurately than dermatologists. So that's fabulous. That's like an AI for good hit. But the system finding 95% of melanomas versus 89% of doctors. So how could we not love that? But then it found out that it didn't actually see anything but light skin tones. So it was not able to detect melanomas in skin that was darker. So even when these things are incredibly successful, and let's say the model was fabulous, if the data is corrupt because it's ineffective, it's not going to work. So we're looking to see what are really the innovative fixes to that particular problem.
Amazing. And Eileen, I know you have some more specifics for us under this project. Can you tell us more, please?
Oh, yes. So Caitlin was mentioning how, for example, these systems are more accurate than clinicians or human decision makers. And that can sound like a threat in the beginning, that robots or automated systems are going to take over the workforce. but they are indeed more accurate in, for example, clinical diagnosis or many other tasks. But at the same time, they have these deterministic problems with systemic bias getting embedded in them. And in many cases, even when we think that we collect the highest quality data set in the world, we don't really know what high quality data sets are, because we don't know what kind of implicit biases or historical injustices might be getting embedded in those data sets. And when we look at it from this perspective, we can also see AI as not only a system that might end up amplifying or perpetuating bias, but we can also see it as an explanatory tool or exploratory tool so that we can discover new types of biases. And once we are able to do that, this can also be used in evidence-based policymaking so that we can allocate resources in fair manners, or this can be used to deliver certain targeted education initiatives in certain areas, in certain domains, and so on. But this requires basically that we collect all the data sets out there that we can get our hands on. So we have a bunch of, or millions of probably public data sets that are out there. All of these data sets are coming from different domains. They have different types of noises. They come from different countries and cultures, representing their values, their implicit biases, and all kinds of systemic things that are getting embedded in those in one way or another. And we also have all kinds of private data sets. How can we promote open sourcing these data sets so that we can start combining them and get a better understanding of the scope of gender bias in the world and not just in these data sets? When we look at AI from this perspective, we see that it's a double-edged sword. We don't only look at AI bias, but we also look at societal bias altogether. So by nature, this is a very multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary area for exploring. And accordingly, the proposals we expect in this area can be very creative. It can be technical, non-technical, but there are so many different ways that society can contribute to gender equity through the use of these AI tools, and especially these data sets, because the data sets are out there that give us a clear statistical picture about what is happening. And being able to make use of these things, coming up with systematic ways to combine these data sets, and then maybe start creating our own data sets to investigate particular types of bias, and maybe even simulate, okay, I'm able to detect and evaluate this bias in this type of data set. What kind of a simulation do I need to run so that I can kind of understand what kind of affirmative action or action is going to mitigate these types of biases by promoting gender inclusion? And when we say gender inclusion, I want to again emphasize, as other brain trusts were mentioning, that we are not talking about the male-female binary. It's all representation of gender, because in data sets, usually people in the social domain are represented as either male or female in categories. And it's not clear how effective this is. At the same time, it's not clear how ethical this is. Can we really categorize people so that we proxy to their properties? Can we come up with better ways to improve social representation, individuals' representation, as opposed to categorizing them? And how do we use all of this information to promote gender equity and sustainable development goals in the United Nations?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Eileen. So to summarize, our third topic is: how can diverse data sets be identified and collectively leveraged to give a more complete picture on gender inequality to allow for evidence-based policymaking? So we're now going to show you a slide that actually shows all three of the topic areas, because I know some of you may have missed the first two or some of the words within those. So we'll share that slide right now. Amazing, thank you. It's slide number 3. There we go, perfect. Okay, so again, topic 1, identify technical and non-technical ways to define, detect, and evaluate algorithmic gender bias. Topic 2, how can AI systems be designed and used to help human decision-making be more gender inclusive? And topic 3, how can diverse data sets be identified and collectively leveraged to give a more complete picture on gender inequality, which will lead to evidence-based policymaking? So we can share this after the webinar is over. And again, just a reminder, if you have questions, you can start asking them in the Q&A area. But before we get into the Q&A section, I wanted to introduce my amazing colleague, Amir Benefathemi, who will tell us a little bit more about what to expect in terms of the process, like how to submit your projects and what are some key deadlines and dates. Amir?
Thank you very much, Haneen, and I'm glad to be here. So I'm Amir Benefathemi. I'm Chief Innovation Officer at XPRIZE, and I've been partnering with ITU for the past 4 years on the AI for Good Global Summit. I'm currently the program chair and also content curator for the content of AI for Good Summit. Once we designed the breakthrough sessions in the past 3 years, we realized that there is ample desire and need to collaborate on projects that have immediate visibility and can lead to actions. So one of the outcomes of this breakthrough track, which we are witnessing today, the launch of it, is for everyone to propose ideas, project initiatives that fall under the gender equity lens, and try to give you some form of visibility in the September 21st to 25th week of AI for Good Summit. How this works is that there is a link that is going to be shared with you, and you can submit project ideas, ask questions, and tell us what you think we should be doing in the 3 topics that have been mentioned and show to you on the screen. You have until August 1st to submit your ideas and projects. And the brain trust that is gathered here, along with Azar and Stephen that are with us today, along with 20 other experts, will look at those projects and help you refine them. And we will select 3 topics or 3 projects or 3 initiatives that will be given visibility during the AI for Good Summit week in September to be workshopped and hopefully to be launched. So the goal of this breakthrough and this breakout series is to help projects that are amazing and have an impact on this gender lens to be launched after the summit. And we have about 3 months to work on them. So we give you the chance to propose those projects. We'll give you access to amazing brain trust and experts to accompany and give you advice and opinion and support in terms of being ready. And we select 3 because we cannot do more to be presenting during this week in September. I hope this is hopefully clear. We're very excited by this topic. XPRIZE has been on the forefront of gender equity, and we have launched a full gender equity lens. We have been in the past 3 years talking about gender biases and ethics in AI. And we figured that the best way to continue this conversation is to get a chance for project initiative to surface and to listen to all of you and to see how we can collectively build meaningful projects and launch them. Because at the end, solutions have to be sustainable. And beyond conferences and white papers and anything else, we hope that we can collectively identify ways to progress in this direction. And the brand trust is guiding us in this direction as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amir. So to repeat, the deadlines. August 1st is the deadline for submissions. August 5th is when our brain trust and mentors will start reviewing the submissions. And then the brain trust and experts will mentor teams that are selected until August 25th. And then the top 3 submissions will be chosen on September 1st. And then those teams will then be guided through a process in preparation for the workshop, which will be September 2nd through 21st. And I did share the link in the chat, which is the link to the website where you can actually go at the very bottom of the page. You will write in your name and email and select gender as the track. And then once you hit submit, you will receive an email with more details. So we will share that link again after the webinar if you didn't catch it in the chat. But think it's time for our Q&A, and we have some really great questions coming in. So the first question, what set of readings would you propose to accompany the launch of the initiative? Readings, for example, that would help us better understand the bias systems around us. Brain Trust, any suggestions on readings?
Well, I'll jump in. Well, there's so much, and it depends on what and in what way you want to approach the topic. If we want to talk about data, just to get yourself all fired up, Invisible Women is a very, very good kind of primer just to show you how this is kind of systemic and ways that you might want to unpack data bias. We can come up with maybe a couple of really algorithms of oppression is another that's amazing. Sophia Noble. There are a bunch of incredible books that have been coming out, and we could maybe put together some PDFs too. But quite frankly, what I'd love to know just in the chat, I think we'd all like to know, are you looking more about learning about systemic problems, or are you interested more in hearing about some technical solutions that already exist, which are also available?
Anyone else? I mean, we can definitely put a list together of some helpful readings, but Eileen, do you have any?
Yeah. So I teach bias in AI in spring. As a result, I have a comprehensive list of research papers, as well as books and blog posts regarding this topic. Bias in AI is a relatively new research area. And luckily, as a result, we have a list that is kind of feasible to read. But if you would like to get an idea about the technical background in this area, the fairmlbook.org, which is an open source book in fairness in machine learning, might be a good starting point. Other than that, Caitlin mentioned amazing books. There is also Weapons of Math Destruction by Katie O'Neill. That's another one. I would be happy to share my reading list, which is ever growing. Another option is looking at the few conferences in this area, fairness in machine learning. There aren't that many of them. There's also AI Ethics and Society, for example. And looking at the most recent papers in those conferences will also give you an idea about where the field is, what the open problems are, what kind of problems are being handled and solved nowadays.
Also, I think that in order to get a handle on what's going on with the biases in AI, it might be good to start with just AI in general. A colleague of ours, Own the AI Revolution, I believe is the name of the book, Neil Sahota, and also some blogs, online blogs. I know Ernst & Young has a good topic on women or the gender bias of AI. So I think some of your current information, real-time information are going to come from the blogs, but I think it's a great idea to put a list together and add it to the website. That's a great question.
Amazing. Yeah. So our homework will be to create a list and we'll share it with all the attendees after this. Does that sound good? Perfect. Okay. So the next question we have is, can you tell me what you all think about doctored data sets that purposefully account for representation? Is that impractical because we need some sort of massive data pipeline for training and ongoing data after deployment?
So that when I saw that question, I think it's interesting. Doctored data sets. I'm curious to know if it's if they're referring to intentionally diverse data sets or something that's not real. You're kind of getting the data from different places. So to that end, I think intentionally diverse data sets are very important. That's what we're talking about. We need to figure out how do we make those data sets diverse, and we need to make an intentional effort to do so.
One thing that we haven't brought up that I think we would be remiss from the UN community and the feminist community is that there isn't actually any real systemized way to get sex disaggregated data worldwide, or even in a place like the US, where you saw that you weren't even able to disaggregate who was getting COVID, who not. And this is just worldwide. And this means that policy decisions, of course, are made just based on sort of the back of an envelope, because nobody knows how women are affected or not affected. And that's not something that we've really talked about in the questions. We say, actually, how can you kind of use data sets that are there, but it's also, and design new data sets, but it's also, how can you unpack the data that we do have to know where the women are and where the intersections are.
Great. I would also like to add one more point. So there's a policy aspect to this question as well, because for many legal purposes, using protected attributes in data sets while making decisions is prohibited. It's illegal. So we cannot represent people with protected attributes to make decisions about them. But at the same time, these data sets have some sort of proxies to these protected attributes that are influencing the decision-making processes. So I understand that we don't want to make decisions based on protected attributes, but at the same time, if we don't include them in these data sets in a way to doctor these data sets, then we cannot really easily analyze the gender bias or whatever types of bias is leaking in these data sets. When it's doctored, it gives us a more structured way to handle these things and measure them. But there is this dilemma about non-discriminatory decision-making versus being aware of these protected attributes and accordingly making decisions. And this is stemming from the issue that our law and policy is designed for human decision makers and not automated decision makers. And policy will need to somehow progress and adapt to this new decision-making realm so that we can come up with standardized ways of generating or collecting these data sets.
Amazing. Great. Thank you, Francesca. Anything before we move on to the next? Great. Okay, so the next question is anyone a part of this panel or the mentors machine learning or AI engineers so we can verify our algorithms and do some concrete testing? So
yes, I think Eileen is an expert of the field. I work in AI, I have teams of people doing all sorts of AI techniques, but I'm not sure that we can help the projects, during the mentoring phases. We can help the projects to understand, how to test and how to evaluate what they are planning to do. So that's definitely something that we can do. I'm not sure that what was asked was really testing that we do of their solutions, but more like a mentoring, I think. But I also like the question about the fact that we should integrate multidisciplinarity and multi-gender also in our own mentor, and we already have it in the brain trust, but also in the other experts that we will identify.
Right. Francesca gave an overall summary. We can, of course, try to help and mentor, but I would like to also remind that being able to test these systems for bias is a research project within itself, because we don't really have these methods or definitions to understand and test these types of biases. So this is one of the goals. How can we collaborate together to collectively create these systems and data sets and come up with definitions that can be at one point standardized to promote gender equity?
I'd just like to add also that we have reached out to some AI engineers to be on part of the mentoring team. So to the extent that we hear a positive back from those, we will have them available. But we have thought about that as a component that we need to round out these teams.
Definitely. Great. So moving on to the next question. What are your best practice recommendations for dealing with legacy data fields that have only collected binary data when broadening to an open gender reporting system?
Well, isn't that what one of the projects would be? I think that's exactly the kind of great question that we're looking for somebody to give us a methodology to try and answer, and maybe bring the rest of the world along. with you to answer it. Maybe it's already been done. I don't know. But
True, but that's when you can submit your project and let us know that it's happening. All right.
I would like to see the thing about your $5 million reskilling prize and how that has to do Kenny Chen's question and how this impacts with your gender equality work.
That's a great question. Amir, do you want to answer more on the rapid reskilling prize? And we can share more information too.
Absolutely. The rapid reskilling prize is of course accelerating job placement and reskilling. And in that prize, we are fully adopting the gender equity lens that we have developed at XPRIZE, along with the ethical framework that we adopted from a number of university researchers to give all the competitors a first baseline way to propose solutions that are gender unbiased or equal. But it's up to the competitors to actually come up with solutions, as Kathleen said, right? We're looking for those amazing proposals that will be fully inclusive.
Right. Yeah, and the Rapid Reskilling XPRIZE just launched yesterday, which is very exciting. So we will know more in the coming months about what teams will be doing to tackle this issue. Okay, so I think we touched on all of the questions, but of course, if you have any more, you can always reach out to the AI for Good team, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Just a reminder, so if we could actually share the screen that has the website on there, Janu, please.
Anita, as we're doing that, I just wanted to kind of follow up to say that, you know, what we're dealing with is a complex issue. And I think you can see from the questions, you know, our team is not the team that should have the answers. We're posing a lot of these questions and hoping that the crowd would go out. We have people even online today from all across the globe, and we are hoping that the structure we've set forth will allow everyone to come together with some support from us and help solve some of these or answer some of these questions. And also, I just want to compel everyone that this is really, you know, life and death. It's not just we want to be equal, so to speak, but when you look at, you know, what my colleagues have talked about with car accidents, data that help prevent accidents, you know, in the medical technology industry, you know, those things are life and death. So this is really an important initiative that we've assembled around, just to reemphasize.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, we do not have all the answers. That's why we convene the entire world to come together to come up with the solutions. Okay, I think we are done with our Q&A portion, and I just wanted to reiterate our deadline is August 1st for submissions. So visit the website to plug in your information, and we'll send an email with more information. And then August 5th is when our Brain Trust and mentors will start reviewing the submissions, and they will start mentoring teams until August 25th. And then the top 3 projects will be selected on September 1st, with workshops happening the week of September 2nd to 25th. So we are so grateful that you have spent your morning, evening, afternoon with us for the last hour. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to our ITU partners. You absolutely just blow us out of the water every webinar that we've ever done with you. Thank you so much. And I think I'm handing it over to Ida to do a closeout. And I just wanted to thank our Brain Trust members as well for your time and your passion for solving this issue. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Haneen, and thank you also to all of the panelists. There were a lot of great questions and a great discussion going on. Before we wrap it up, I'd like to highlight a few things that may be of interest to all of us on slightly different topics, but all in AI. So this Wednesday, tomorrow, We are excited to host a webinar with the Global Esports Federation on the power and potential of esports for good. And then on Friday, June 26th, is the AI for Good Innovation Factory's live pitching session. So be sure to tune in all throughout this week for even more AI for Good. We're going to be pasting the links to these events in the chat, and you can also find out more at any time on aiforgood.itu.int. With that, we have indeed reached the end of this webinar, but would like to once again thank everyone involved, our panel, all of you participants from around the world, our partners, sponsors, and our co-convener, Switzerland. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you tomorrow.